Let's talk about Chris Paul and the Rockets. They still won. They beat Houston in Game 1, but Chris Paul only had 14 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists. He also had 6 turnovers with about 20 seconds left in the game. He also threw the ball out of bounds, almost cost them the game. Minnesota did not hit a three-pointer to tie, but it came close at the end of Game 1. Should the Rockets be worried about CP3's play, and could that pose problems in the future of the playoffs?
No. I think the bad luck that Chris Paul has had in the playoffs has been just that. I think it's been a lot of bad luck. Yeah, he that Thunder game where he overthrew the ball gave them that win that basically ended the series for them. I think that was a mistake that's going to follow Chris Paul, but we can't ignore the fact that the Clippers, every time they went to the playoffs, it was just a stroke. There was like a black cloud over them every time they would enter. Someone would get hurt. It would be Blake Griffin, or it would be Chris Paul, or it would be DeAndre. It would just be somebody. Somebody would fall out of the picture because of injury, and it would derail them. So I think, and I still think Chris Paul, yeah, he had a subpar game. He's -4. I think it still shouldn't be too worrisome about it. I think he's just shaking out the yips right now. And also, if you have a guy like James Harden dropping 44, I think you're worried about Chris Paul, but I think you're still a little bit more secure knowing that, like, Chris Paul has a little bit of a crutch to fall onto. So I think Chris Paul is going to come back out. I think he's going to have a good game. I think he's going to drop 20 and 11 next game. I think he's going to have a good game coming in versus Timberwolves team. But also, you have to take into account that this Timberwolves team isn't an 8 seed. They're not an 8 seed. They're an 8 seed only in statistical standings-wise. Jimmy Butler missed that last third of the season. They should be a 3 or 4 seed.
Yeah, I have to disagree with you on this one. I think it is worrisome. I think if you didn't have Chris Paul, James Harden, and Mike D'Antoni on the same team, then you just say, hey, it's just one game. But Chris Paul has proven he's never made it to a Western Conference Finals in his career. D'Antoni's never made it to an NBA Finals. Harden made it to one NBA Finals with OKC, but he hasn't made it back with the Rockets. Game 6 against the Spurs last year, he had a plus-minus of a -28 in Game 6. It's an elimination game. He had 10 points. He shot 2 of 11. So Harden has his issues. D'Antoni, everyone knows his issues with the Suns. He couldn't get past anyone. He was always the top team in the regular season, and he would get to the playoffs and he would lose. Same with Chris Paul. I mean, the Clippers have been a top team in the NBA the past few years, and every time they get into the playoffs, they find a way to blow it. I believe it was a few years ago that they blew it against Houston, too. I think they had like a 20-something point game, and it was a Game 5 or Game 6. They blew that game and ended up losing the entire series. So I think there are a lot of issues. I do think Houston is very lucky that Chris Paul had a terrible game, had a lot of turnovers late. But thank God, James Harden had 44 points, 8 assists, and 4 rebounds. I mean, I don't think Harden is going to choke. Harden is playing like an MVP in the playoffs. He has played like that in the regular season. He is the team, but I do think it's worrisome about Chris Paul. They might get by Minnesota with Harden playing well and Chris Paul not playing like this, but against a Golden State team, that you can't have Chris Paul having 14 points and 4 assists. You need Harden averaging 30. You need Chris Paul averaging 20 and 10. You need them to be playing well down the stretch, and you need them to have the confidence. They did get the win, but it might be in the back of Chris Paul's head next time it is a close game.
I'm not going to disagree with you. If they were playing the Warriors, a healthy Warriors with Steph Curry, then I want Chris Paul at least dropping 20 and 10 a game if you're in the playoff series. I'm not going to dispute that. But we also need to look at the fact that this is a different Houston team. This is
How is it a different Houston? They've won one playoff game. You can't say it's a different Houston team.
This is a very different Houston team. They didn't have Chris Paul last year.
But they still only won one playoff
last year, and you see D'Antoni. D'Antoni would be my coach of the year, debated between Dwayne Casey. He's in that top 4 or 5 competing for coach of the year, and I think now we say, Harden, he has issues in the playoffs. D'Antoni, he has issues in the playoffs. Chris Paul, he has issues in the playoffs. But now they are able to come together. I think that now this team is much better. Everyone on the floor for the Rockets can shoot. Every single person. The only person who isn't shooting is Clint Capella or Nene. And then Nene and Clint Capella are physically dominating down low to get your rebounds. I think this team, and we also have to look back on the playoff round last year where the Rockets were playing the San Antonio Spurs with Kawhi Leonard healthy. All right, Kawhi Leonard's top 3 when he's healthy, in my opinion. He's top 3 in the league. It's LeBron, KD, Kawhi. All right? And if you have Kawhi Leonard, who's arguably, when he's healthy, the best two-way player in the game,
but that,
and they took them to 6 games.
10 points,
but this
2 of
Rockets
11
team
shooting.
didn't have the weapons that they have now. This is a different look.
The only difference is Chris Paul. And Chris Paul has never shown that he can be an...
Yeah, Chris Paul's only the person that took a Charlotte Hornets team to the playoffs.
And what did they do in the playoffs?
Played the Lakers.
And they would lose.
The Lakers?
And they would lose.
They're going to lose to the Lakers. The Lakers
But,
won.
I mean, this team isn't going to be defined by if they win against Minnesota or they win next round. It's, are they going to beat the Warriors? And if they do beat the Warriors, can they win an NBA Finals?
Yes,
That's the only difference.
I agree.
Nothing on the Rockets has ever shown to you that they can win an NBA Finals.
Yes, okay. All right. All right. What we've seen, I'm not saying that it is definite, but what we've seen this season and what they've shown, they were the top team at the Western Conference. Yes, of course, I mean, the Warriors had injuries to Steph Curry, but they were ahead of them even when Steph Curry was healthy. And I think to say that that's not enough to argue that they are championship contenders already, like top 2 already for in the conversation to winning the finals, is a disrespect to them. And I think the fact of the matter is, James Harden, he's our MVP, but Chris Paul, he's also there, and we've seen that Chris Paul makes a difference whenever he's on the floor with them. Chris Paul, Clint Capella, James Harden are 36, 37, and 2 when all of them are healthy. So you can't tell me that Chris Paul isn't that big enough of a factor to say that this could be their year.
I mean, I don't know. Still 1-0. Don't have a lot of playoff experience. We will have to see. Personally, I think they'll get. The Timberwolves are a tough team. I picked the Timberwolves.
I think if they get past the Timberwolves, the Rockets.
I mean, they'll win round 2.
They're gonna have the momentum on their side.
I don't know if they catch OKC. Who knows what Westbrook could do? Put some pressure on them.
I'm looking forward to that series.
Okay, let's move.